You know the feeling intimately. The document sits open, a stark white expanse mocking your inaction, while a mounting sense of dread pools in your stomach. You possess the skills, the time, and the necessity to act, yet an invisible barrier paralyzes your mind. Why do we consistently delay the very endeavors that matter most to our advancement? The answer does not lie in a deficit of character or a lack of willpower, but in a profound misunderstanding of our own cognitive machinery. Consider a counterintuitive premise. The anxiety you feel regarding an unstarted project is not your enemy, but a misdirected psychological engine waiting to be harnessed. The Growth Codex is your systematic blueprint for mastering the mind and cultivating a life of purpose. By deconstructing the hidden architecture of human behavior, we can transform ancient wisdom and modern science into actionable pathways for enduring personal growth. We must decode the precise mechanism required to dismantle the procrastination cycle permanently. The foundational key to this transformation was discovered nearly a century ago, not in a sterile laboratory, but amid the bustling atmosphere of a 1920s Viennese coffeehouse. A young psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik sat observing a peculiar phenomenon among the waitstaff. These servers could remember complex, unpaid orders of remarkable length with absolute precision, navigating a chaotic floor without writing a single item down. Yet the moment the bill was settled and the transaction closed, the memory of that intricate order vanished entirely from their minds. This observation led to the formulation of the Zeigarnik Effect, a cognitive bias demonstrating that the human mind is fundamentally wired to remember and fixate upon interrupted or incomplete tasks far more readily than those that have been finished. A cognitive bias in this context is a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment, where inferences about other people and situations may be drawn in an illogical fashion. For our purposes, it means your brain perceives an open loop as a biological threat to mental equilibrium, generating persistent cognitive tension until the loop is closed. When you avoid a critical responsibility, you are inadvertently weaponizing this tension against yourself. The unstarted task acts as a phantom weight, lingering in the subconscious and consuming vast amounts of working memory. Your brain continually pings you with low-grade anxiety, a biological alarm bell reminding you of the unresolved state. This mental tension is precisely what makes chronic delay so exhausting. You are burning cognitive fuel simply by refusing to begin, trapping yourself in a state of paralysis without any of the productive output. This psychological quirk explains why your to-do list often feels like a physical burden pressing down on your chest. You might spend 6 hours dreading a difficult phone call that would only take 5 minutes to complete. The dread itself is the Zeigarnik Effect misfiring, flooding your system with the friction of the unresolved. But what if you could engineer this exact cognitive tension to propel you forward rather than holding you back? The Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca astutely observed that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Stoicism, an ancient philosophy focused on maximizing positive emotions and reducing negative ones through the mastery of one's own mind, teaches us to distinguish between the actual difficulty of a task and the catastrophic narrative we build around it. By understanding the biological root of our hesitation, we can strip away the emotional suffering and address the bare mechanics of the work itself. The strategy for leveraging this phenomenon is elegantly simple. You must artificially trigger the cognitive loop by taking the smallest, most frictionless action possible. If you need to write a comprehensive report, do not commit to finishing it. Commit only to opening the software and writing a single, imperfect sentence. If you need to organize a chaotic room, commit only to putting away one single item. By crossing the threshold of task initiation, you fundamentally alter your psychological relationship with the work. Once that initial barrier is breached, the dynamic flips entirely. The Zeigarnik Effect, previously a source of paralyzing dread, transforms into a powerful ally. Your brain now registers the project as an active, incomplete task, and it will naturally generate a subtle, driving compulsion to see it through to resolution. The mental tension that once kept you frozen is now the very fuel propelling you toward productive action. This is why relying on sheer willpower is a fundamentally flawed strategy for ambitious individuals. Willpower is a finite resource, easily depleted by stress, fatigue, and the countless micro-decisions of daily life. Psychological design, however, is sustainable. By intentionally opening the cognitive loop through a microscopic action, You bypass the need for immense motivation. You are no longer pushing a boulder up a mountain. You are tipping it over the edge and letting gravity do the work. To systematize this approach, we must integrate a specific mental model known as implementation intentions. Developed by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer, an implementation intention is a self-regulatory strategy in the form of an if-then plan that pre-decides how you will act in a given situation. A mental model is simply a representation of how something works, a cognitive tool that helps us understand life, make decisions, and solve complex problems. Instead of a vague aspiration like deciding you will work on your business plan tomorrow, you create a precise architectural blueprint for action. You state explicitly that if it is 8 o'clock in the morning and you have finished your coffee, then you will sit at your desk and write for exactly 10 minutes. This removes the ambiguity that breeds hesitation. You have preloaded the decision, drastically reducing the cognitive friction required to initiate the task. When you combine the triggering power of the Zeigarnik Effect with the structural precision of implementation intentions, you create an almost inescapable trap for your own procrastination. The if-then plan forces the initiation, and the resulting open loop ensures the continuation. This synthesis elevates you from a passive victim of your moods to an active architect of your behavior, capable of executing complex strategies regardless of your transient emotional state. Further mastery requires the practice of task chunking. A massive, monolithic project is terrifying to the primitive parts of our brain because it represents an undefined expenditure of energy. By aggressively slicing a monumental goal into molecular, highly specific components, you create a series of easily openable loops. You are not writing a book. You are outlining one chapter. You are not launching a company. You are registering a single domain name. It is vital to acknowledge the quiet shame that often accompanies chronic delay. You may have spent years internalizing the belief that you are lazy or undisciplined, carrying the weight of unfulfilled potential like a stone. Release that narrative today. The friction you have experienced is merely a mechanical failure to understand your own operating system. Forgiveness is not just an act of grace. It is a tactical necessity to clear the cognitive slate for new action. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to concentrate every minute on doing what is in front of him with precise and genuine earnestness. The echoes of that ancient wisdom still resonate perfectly with modern neurobiology. To do the work of a human being is to focus intensely on the present action, discarding the overwhelming contemplation of the whole. The present moment is the only arena where the loop can actually be opened. Once you have mastered the art of initiation, you can employ an advanced technique favored by prolific creators, strategic stopping. Rather than pushing yourself to the point of absolute exhaustion and finishing a work session at a natural conclusion, you intentionally halt your progress in the middle of a sentence, a concept, or a task. You deliberately leave the loop open when you step away from your desk. This counterintuitive pause hijacks the brain's natural desire for closure. Because the task was interrupted midstream, the cognitive tension remains active in your subconscious while you rest. Your mind continues to process the information, solve problems, and organize thoughts in the background. When you return to the work the next day, there is no dread or friction. You are immediately pulled back into the flow state by the biological urge to complete the unfinished sequence. Ernest Hemingway famously utilized this exact strategy, explicitly advising writers to stop when they are going good and when they know what will happen next. By refusing to drain his creative reservoir completely, he ensured that the Zeigarnik pull would drag him effortlessly back to the typewriter the following morning. The shadow of that bias still loomed, but he had trained it to serve his genius rather than sabotage it. This methodology extends far beyond daily chores or creative writing. It is the fundamental architecture of a deeply productive life. Whether you are attempting to master a new language, build a physical fitness routine, or construct a financial empire, the barrier to entry is always the same. The mastery of your own psychology dictates that you must respect the biological constraints of your mind while ruthlessly exploiting its operational quirks. As you implement this codex, you will notice a profound shift in your internal landscape. The crushing weight of the unstarted endeavor will evaporate, replaced by a crystalline focus on the immediate next step. You will transition from a state of anxious paralysis into a state of fluid momentum. You are no longer fighting against the current of your own mind. You have built a sail to catch its invisible winds. Inevitably, there will be days when the friction returns, when the couch feels magnetic and the work feels impossible. When this occurs, do not panic or revert to self-flagellation. Recognize the mental tension for what it is, a simple signal that a loop needs to be opened. Lower the barrier to entry until it is almost comical. Tell yourself you will work for merely 60 seconds. The biological drive for completion will almost always override the initial resistance once the threshold is crossed. The blueprint is now in your hands. You understand that the discomfort of procrastination is the misapplication of a powerful cognitive bias. You know that willpower is brittle, but psychological design is unbreakable. By utilizing implementation intentions to preload your decisions, chunking tasks to eliminate fear, and leveraging strategic stopping to maintain momentum, you possess the tools to dismantle any barrier to your progress. Do not let this knowledge become another passive acquisition, another concept you understand but fail to apply. Identify the single most important task you have been avoiding this week. Define the absolute smallest, most ridiculous first step required to begin. Do not commit to finishing it. Commit only to opening the loop, and do it the moment you have the opportunity. Let the natural tension of your own mind pull you toward greatness. You have the capacity to rewrite the code of your own behavior, transforming hesitation into unstoppable momentum. The path to self-mastery is not forged through flawless discipline, but through a precise understanding of the human machine. Keep building, keep refining, and never surrender the pursuit of your highest potential. This is the Growth Codex.